Nowadays, there are many different essential oil companies on the market. So one of the things you're going to be asked is, what makes Young Living different to other essential oil companies? So many of the companies that you find that sell essential oils are actually marketing companies that have chosen essential oils as their commodity. And they may be passionate about essential oils, but that's still very different to Young Living, which is a true essential oil company. Our foundations are in our farms and in the fact that we actually produce essential oils. We don't just market them. So we don't just help people, we don't just supply them to people as the end user. We actually make essential oils. And any of us have the opportunity to visit Young Living's farms and experience their amazing seed to seal process. When I first started using the Young Living oils, I had been using other brands of top quality essential oils up to that point, and I put Young Living oils on me and I saw such quick and dramatic effects from Young Living that I went, wow, how can two essential oil companies produce such different products? So top Australian brands versus Young Living. And I was so excited to find out, what is it that makes the Young Living oils so different to other very reputable brands? To me, it's like they're in a universe of their own. And so I've had the privilege of working on many of the different Young Living farms around the world, and I've been able to piece together a beautiful understanding of what makes Young Living different. And it really rests in Young Living's seed to seal process. So every aspect of Young Living's production process, from the growing through to the bottling of their essential oils, is filled with love and dedication and a desire to be world class. So let's look at what that means, because really that concept, that mission, has its roots in Gary Young, the founder of Young Living, and his passion for plants. So Gary had had a horrific logging accident in his early 20s that left him paralysed and not able to walk. And he was told he would never walk again. But during that time, he actually came across natural therapies, and he studied, and some of the different things that he studied were naturopathy, herbalism, homeopathy, reflexology. He had a thirst for knowledge, and through applying the things that he was learning, he got himself out of that wheelchair. And it was only after that that he encountered essential oils, really good quality ones that he found in Geneva in Switzerland. And he realized that there is such a difference between the top quality oils and the commercial brands, that in his heart he wanted to make a difference in people's lives, and he wanted to farm essential oils and aromatic plants and produce the world's best quality of essential oils. So that was always his mission, and it continues to be the mission of Young Living today. Yet what does that actually mean? Well, it means that Young Living, and Gary, when he was still alive, he would do such research into the plants beyond what other people would do. So, for instance, when he had just opened his helichrysum farm in Croatia, he knew that helichrysum is a beautiful plant that grows wild throughout the Mediterranean. It loves rocks, so you'll often see it growing on the rocky walls of cliffs and rocky banks. And Gary had the question, well, if it loves rocks, if we're to grow this plant, what size rocks should we have in the field? Should we have large ones or small ones? It's a simple enough question, but it actually involved doing field after field after field of experimentation, where Gary brought in a rock crusher, and each field had the rocks that existed in the field crushed to different sizes. And what he discovered in that process is helichrysum loves small rocks. It actually thrives better with that. So Gary was always experimenting. I remember when I visited him in Ecuador, and he had just started producing eucalyptus blue essential oil. And this beautiful tree actually has two types of leaves on it. It has the mature leaf and the younger leaf, and they're very distinct in their size and shape. And Gary was doing experiments to say, well, what happens if I just distill the younger leaf? What happens if I just distill the older leaf? What's the difference like? Does one produce a superior essential oil over the other? And it was this thirst for knowledge that continues today that is part of the ingredient in Young Living's seed to seal process. It's a real passion for plants. It's asking the questions of, what does this plant need to flourish? How does the soil need to be treated? How does the plant need to be treated? At what age should it be harvested? When we harvest, should we immediately distill it, or should we actually let the plant matter lie on the ground for a certain number of days or weeks? Is that going to produce a better yield for us or a better quality of oil? There's so many variables. So we come from that process, and then we put our plant into the distiller, the big cooking pot, and we distill the plant for its essential oil. Now, most of our plants are produced through steam distillation. A few of them are produced in different methods. So with steam distillation, we actually run steam through a distillation chamber, which is often commonly called a cooking pot, and that actually causes the plant matter to break down, and the essential oil is released with the steam, and then it's collected. But what temperature should we distill at? Most companies want to distill quickly because they want it to be commercially viable. And that means they're going to turn up their temperature and turn up their pressure. But one of the things to realize is that essential oils contain hundreds, if not thousands, of very beautiful aromatic molecules and constituents. And we call this the oil's fingerprint. And what Young Living wants to do is to take that entire fingerprint and bring it over into our bottles so that the true magic of that essential oil that's been created over eons actually makes its way into our bottle in a way that it's still alive, that it still has a life force. Now, most companies, by turning up the temperature and pressure, they're going to kill off a lot of those fragile constituents. So Young Living always cooks at the lowest temperature possible in order to be able to still extract the essential oil, but do it at such gentle temperatures so as not to destroy those fragile, heat-sensitive constituents. And if you were to buy a beautiful organic essential oil of lavender from France, you might have the correct type of plant. It's organic, if that's what's on the label, it's organically produced. But it would have been distilled for 45 minutes because that's what traditionally is done in France. The cooking time, the distillation time, has traditionally been 45 minutes. And that's enough time to get all of the beautiful aromatic molecules out so that you get a lovely smelling essential oil. But that wasn't enough for Gary. He wanted to understand, how do I capture the entire fingerprint? I want to get that full magic into my bottle. And he discovered that lavender actually needs to be distilled for 1.5 hours in a standard sized distillation chamber. So that means that when you compare those two essential oils side by side, the Young Living oil is still going to have more potency and more punch than an essential oil that's been produced just for 45 minutes. Another great example of that is cypress essential oil. So if you buy a beautiful organic cypress essential oil, it's probably been distilled for the traditional time of 2.25 hours. Yet Gary did experiments to find out, what do I have to do to capture the entire fingerprint of the cypress oil and have that in the bottle. And he found that if he distills for 24 hours, then in that last 20 minutes, there are 18 key active constituents that come across. If you distill 23 and a half hours, you're going to miss those. So isn't that exciting? You go to another company and you're buying cypress oil that's been distilled for 2¼ hours, and it's a nice quality cypress oil. Or you come to Young Living and you get a cypress oil that's been distilled for 24 hours, and it has the secret sauce in it because it has the entire fingerprint of the essential oil in that bottle. And to me, that is such an important part of what causes Young Living's oils to be so potent and so efficacious. And it explains to me why I saw such a difference between Young Living versus even the very top brands that I was purchasing previously. Yet it doesn't stop there, because Young Living knows that adulteration and chemical exposure is such a problem for farmers today, especially when we're talking essential oils. So there is such a demand for essential oils in the world that many unscrupulous suppliers are actually adulterating their oils. They're extending their oils with other chemicals or adding chemicals into their distillation chamber to help extract the oil faster. And these chemicals, some of them are virtually undetectable. And so if you are simply a marketing company purchasing essential oils and you're buying what you believe to be a beautiful, pure essential oil, unless it's been run through some very rigorous tests, you simply don't know. Young Living doesn't produce all of their own oils on their own farms. They also have partner farms and seed-to-seal suppliers. And regardless of where the essential oil is produced, whether it's on one of their corporate-owned farms or one of their partner farms or seed-to-seal suppliers, every batch of essential oils goes through the same testing process. Young Living has one of the most state-of-the-art testing facilities for essential oils, and every batch of oil is run through 15 scientific tests 3 times before it gets bottled and 3 times after it gets bottled. So that means every batch of essential oils has been run through 90 different tests, and it must pass all of these tests if it's to be released to us, so that we can be guaranteed that our oils have met the highest standards. So just 2 other ways that I see Young Living as being really cutting edge. And one is that no chemicals touch our plants or touch our oils at any point in the growing, distillation and bottling process. And obviously our scientific testing is part of what can pick up any type of adulteration. Yet if you, like me, go and volunteer and work on some of Young Living's farms and experience the seed-to-seal process, you'll know that part of that process is that we do not spray for weeds. We hand weed. We use natural methods to be able to combat any insect problems or any other issues that might occur with the plants. And Young Living is actually setting the benchmark for many of these ways of natural farming practices. And in addition to that, Young Living realised a number of years ago that they want to set the gold standard in essential oil production. They are the world leader in essential oil production, and so they've brought on board SCS Global, which is an environmental auditing company. They're an independent company. They're not a part of Young Living. Young Living has engaged them to be able to look over all of Young Living's practices in order to certify that Young Living truly is doing sustainable production methods. So that means that we're always very careful to make sure that any plants that we take are replaced that we are actually building the populations in the farms or in the wild. We're supporting the growth of that species of plant. We're not taking from that. We're not endangering the plants in the process. And it's not only the plants. SES Global also looks at the farming practices and how the farmers are cared for and making sure that everyone is paid an appropriate wage. So we know that every step of Young Living's practices are actually done with great ethics as well as great environmental awareness. Now, that's almost the whole story, yet there's one more thing I want to throw into this mix, and that is that Gary Young himself, he dedicated his life to producing essential oils that would transform our world. His vision is to bring the Young Living essential oils into every home in the world, because he knows that they are a gift to each and every one of us, no matter what's going on in our life. And his intention is infused into Young Living as a company and ripples through into every bottle of essential oil. And I have always felt that Young Living is far more than an essential oil producer and an essential oil company. It has a place in our world to really make a difference in people's lives. So it is changing lives every single day. And as Gary said, he said, I never make a product for a profit. I always make it for a purpose. And to me, that desire, that is the desire for helping the world, that is the desire for making a difference in the world, that is one of the beautiful energies that infuses into every product that we buy from Young Living. And so that whole picture is what makes Young Living different to every other essential oil company in the market. And it's why you're going to feel the difference from every drop of essential oil that you use.